everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Lori Palau, and I am really excited that you're here with me today. I'm going to be flying solo for this episode. And before we get into it, I just wanted to give you guys an update because I feel like I've been going a million miles an hour and there's a lot going on here at SBO, and wanted to just give you some insight of what's happening here so that you can make sure that you're connected up with us wherever you like to hang out. So several months ago, again, we've mentioned this before, but we started putting all of our episodes on YouTube. So if you are somebody that likes to go to YouTube and you like to watch as opposed to just listening, you can find us on YouTube. So just go to Simply Be Organized. You can even type in my name and you'll find us. So you'll see all of our episodes. And then I have other little snippet videos that I do as well. So again, I just want to encourage anybody that is looking for any type of specific organizing strategies, check us out over there, as well as you can look back at our entire library of podcast episodes, which are on our website, on our podcast page, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. So I know that all of the different podcast platforms keep changing their interfaces and whatnot. So just anywhere that you want to listen, we are pretty much available. So just keep an eye out for that. Again, some people are not sure where we like to hang out. We're kind of all over everywhere, except I'm not on Snapchat, just not my thing. But we are on Instagram, Simply Be Organized. We're on Facebook. We have a Facebook group called This Organized Life Podcast. I'm not somebody that has to spend a ton of time in our Facebook groups, but if you have a question, I will answer, or one of my teammates will answer. It is a great place if you have a question about something that you're working on in your own home with regards to organization or clutter, or if you have an idea for an upcoming episode that you would love to see, have us talk about, post your questions there because we're constantly checking that. You can also always DM us as well. And I have just hired, I'm telling you guys this, and I'm putting it out there publicly. So it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I just hired this intern who's in college to be helping me. And she's insistent about putting me on TikTok. So Jesus, take the wheel on that because I just feel like I'm a little old for that, but you'll have to head on over by the time that this episode airs. There'll probably be some TikTok episodes out. So check that out. I think that's it for all of my public service announcements. The only other thing that I wanted to mention, again, for those of you who might not be familiar or maybe like pass through some of the commercials, is we not only have our Enneagram and Clutter kind of masterclass, if you will, which unpacks all of the personality types within the framework of how we look at our 3 types of clutter: physical, emotional, calendar clutter, and the 5 clutter pitfalls. And it really kind of gives a through line to all the different 9 Enneagram types. We have created a series of mini courses. And within each of those mini courses, you will get specifics for your Enneagram type. And if you don't know your Enneagram type, that's okay. We have lots of different ways. If you just download the intro, which is free, you could download our intro module and it can give you an insight into all the different topics that we cover in the course. Because if you are familiar with the Enneagram, there's a lot of layers to it. So we're not covering every single nuance. It's very specific. And it's for those of you who are familiar with the Enneagram, it centers a lot around thinking, feeling, and doing. So it is a lot around our 3 centers of intelligence, that triads and stances, and kind of what that role is in relation to our clutter. So it's very insightful. I've been using that framework a ton with my personal clients, and it's really been a game changer in the specific strategies that I've been using to help approach where they're struggling with clutter. And find those sustainable solutions as opposed to just saying, here, this is how you do this and have it work. So definitely check out those mini courses. So, and our new promo code is TOL20, TOL20. So check that out. All right, enough about that. I wanted to, if you're listening to this in real time, we are in the middle of September, which is autumn, fall, depending on where you live. There could be different things that are on your radar of things to do. I'm up in the Northeast. It's still hot here, but we are starting to think about those transitions. And a lot of times, if our listeners are parents, fall is a great time to start embarking on certain projects with regard to organization around the house, because the kids are back in school. Hallelujah. After the year we had last year, again, this is where people are going back into the office, hopefully. And so we're starting to really get back into more of a structured routine, which is something that a lot of us have not had in like a year and a half. And so it's a matter of rebuilding those muscles and figuring out, okay, what am I going to be doing? How am I going to be doing it? What is the best way to tackle it? What should I tackle first? Like all of these questions that you might be asking yourself. So I came up with a list of 10 different things. I have the list right here. I'm here for those of you who are watching on YouTube, of things that and most of them are regardless of where you live. A couple of them are a little bit more seasonal specific if you if you live somewhere like myself in the Northeast. But these are great tips for people regardless of where you are. So if you are thinking now is the time for me to start getting my act together, getting more organized, reducing the clutter, you're going to want to lean into this. All right. So I'm going to run through them. The first thing is to schedule, or if you're going to do it yourself, fall yard cleanup. Now, we usually have two main planting seasons that we do. We have fall and we have spring. I also have, that's when I do the big kind of weeding back, cutting back of any of the trees, the shrubs, all of that things. If I'm going to be planting mums for the fall, or, taking out all of the dying petunias or whatever you have that, from the summer that are burnt out, dried out, whatever, it's time to start switching that around. And so for me, I know we have a lawn service that does a lot of the heavy lifting, and they come in there and they'll prune back our trees. We don't really do a ton of mulching in the fall. It's more in the spring, but any type of major stuff that we're going to be doing, if we're going to be edging our property or whatever, we get our landscapers in. And so if you are somebody that enjoys doing this yourself and you have the bandwidth to do it yourself, so even if you enjoy it, are you able to carve out the time? Now that my kids are bigger, my weekends are freeing up because I'm not running to basketball tournaments or concerts or lacrosse, scrimmages or whatever it is. So think about if you're going to actually take the time to do it, or if it makes sense to have somebody else do it. But either way, maintaining the outside of your property, to me, is equally as important as maintaining your organized space inside. So schedule your fall cleanup, yard work, planting, if you're going to do any fall planting, weeding, all that before winter comes. So I usually try to do that in late September, early to mid-October at the latest. So like before Halloween, I usually have that done. So things too. And that also, especially if you're somewhere where there's a lot of trees and there's a lot of raking, you want to make sure the trees have already shed all their leaves and get all of that taken care of off your property. Okay, the second thing is, and this is an inside thing. This is changing the batteries. If they're not hardwired, changing the batteries in your smoke detectors and your carbon monoxide detectors. So this is something that you should do. This is a once a year thing. I like to do it in the fall. Sometimes people will do this, like January 1st, but I say pick your time, right? There's no right or wrong time, but it is important that you do it once a year. So, and you can also check fire extinguishers. Totally had a brain freeze for a second. Yeah. So all of your detectors, your fire extinguishers, any of that safety measures, check them once a year. If they're hardwired in, obviously probably don't have a problem with that, but you want to test it, make sure all of that is working. And again, for me, I like to do that in the fall. So just if you have a Saturday afternoon to do it, or Saturday morning, or whatever, Tuesday morning, could be whenever, just set aside time and mark it on your calendar. Like, this is what we're doing this weekend, because again, it's one of those things that probably not top of mind, probably not on your radar, but if God forbid you need it, you want to make sure that that stuff is working. So that would be the second thing. So third thing, which actually I loop that in with second, was the fire extinguishers. So really 2 and 3 kind of go together. I would pretty much prioritize doing those at the same time. And another thing that I didn't have this on my list, but I will add to it, is flashlights. I don't know about you where you live, but we tend to have a lot of storms there around here that sometimes we will lose power. And so the last thing you want to do is be, caught in a blackout and either not have batteries in your flashlights, or not know where your flashlights are, or flashlights that don't work. So again, you don't have to do this all the time, but if you say, once a year, I'm just going to check all this stuff, make sure that, everything's in working order, you'll be good to go. And that way, if you need stuff, you can always hopefully stay ahead of it and have it there for when the time comes. Scheduling exterminators is the next one. So we also, again, we have an exterminator service that comes, I think it's quarterly. It comes and does just like kind of the outside stuff, maybe does some inside. But I know in the winter where we live, because we live in the country, critters, mice, things, all kinds of whatever, tend to come inside or want to burrow for warmth. So making sure that you have whatever sprays, traps, preventative measures to keep your home critter free. Also, ants are a big thing. Again, the other day, I keep a really clean house, but it doesn't matter. Like, stuff just comes in, and, you're leave the door open, or you have a dog and stuff comes inside. So you always want to just have like those things on hand, like those ant traps or ant baits or whatever. So want to make sure that you have that yourself, but also scheduling some sort of service maintenance so that they can just kind of take care of anything that's happening. So it's a good thing to do in the fall. And then another thing is, what I was going to say was to think about, if you are going to, a lot of times people will use the fall as a way to clean their windows or get their house power washed. Another thing, kind of when you're talking about this maintenance before you go into the deep freeze, depending on where you live, getting that all taken care of. After the winter, after the summer, when you have a lot of mosquitoes and spiders and all of that tends to accumulate kind of that gunk in those high areas and crevices outside your house, to be able to just have it, again, power washed and have the windows like professionally cleaned if it's something that you're not gonna able to do or want to do. I know where we live, there's some really reasonable window cleaners, and for me, it's worth it to invest a few $100s to have somebody professionally come in there and do the whole outside of the windows, and make sure that, again, as we are going into kind of that next season, literally, of winter, that the house is in working order on the outside. So that's another one. I'm going to give you one more tip and then we're going to go for a break. But this one also comes through with outside to do any type of caulking that might be before you go into, a lot of times things will separate with the weather. And before you go into winter, notice if you need to kind of like seal up around windows or doors that might have some drafts or moisture coming in. You don't want to have any of that. So again, doing some, kind of a inventory. I couldn't think of the word. An inventory of, what are the areas that just need a little bit of TLC? Because again, a little tiny, crack or a little tiny opening of a seam, you don't want it to get bigger. And then once that temperature drops and we go into the deep freeze, again, you're probably not going to be addressing any of that stuff until it thaws. So the more that you can kind of stay ahead of things, the better it will be. Okay, we're going to go and take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to give you the rest of the list. So sit tight. All right. So for those of you who, again, live in homes, have garages, a lot of times the garages, especially after summer, it takes a big beating. People going back and forth, they're fishing, they're going to the beach, they're going to the pool, they are riding bikes. There's a lot of, sports equipment, sidewalk chalk, all of the things, camping, you name it. And so our garages are an area that often, again, get neglected. We did our clutter clinic garage a couple months ago. So definitely, if garages are on your radar, go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already. But one of the things that I would tell people is you should do an inventory in the fall of your garage. Put the stuff away, bin up the stuff that you're not going to be using. If you've got, again, summer stuff or specific things that are very seasonal, you don't need to have them easily accessible in your prime real estate. Garage is prime real estate for most people. So you want to make sure that the stuff that you're going to be needing as you transition into the colder months, if you live in an area with colder months, is really important. For us, we have a little shed so that I flip out. I think I've mentioned this in a previous episode, but like I have all of our snow shovels and salt and all of the things out in the shed now for the summer, but then I'm going to be switching it and taking our rakes and my gardening tools and all the things that I was using during the summer and putting them back in the shed and just flipping it out. That way, my garage, which isn't that large, doesn't have to get totally overwhelmed with so much stuff. I only have the stuff in there that I'm using. Takes a little bit of time, but not a ton. Not as much time as you would think. I can do it in an afternoon very easily. And it probably doesn't take me more than a couple hours max, because it's literally just moving, taking summer stuff, putting it in the shed, taking winter stuff, putting it back in the garage. That way, because my garage is attached to my house, when it snows, I have my shovels right there, easily accessible. So that is something that we do. And then again, if there's stuff that we want to put away for the summer, we can just store that in our shed and then bring out the stuff that we need. For example, our generator, because we have a portable generator, again, because we lose power quite a bit. Another thing, and this is regardless of whether or not you have a garage or not, because there's plenty of people who listen to our show that are in an apartment or they don't have a garage. One of the things that is, especially if you have kids that grow like weeds, is to pull out your winter wear bin. And I always like to do this in the fall, because by the time winter rolls around, or by the time we have that first snow boots are hard to come by, or they might not have your size, or the snow pants, or if the storm just comes out of the blue and you don't have enough time to get what you need. And even with, Amazon Prime and all of the things, you don't want to be caught in a winter storm without the right supplies. So stocking up on all of those things. So stocking up on or making sure that your kids haven't outgrown their winter boots or their snow pants or their mittens, cycling out stuff that is just, they're not wearing that coat anymore. They're not wearing that hat or whatever it is. So getting rid of that. And I like to do it in the fall because there's a lot of clothing drives. And I encourage you guys to check your local areas to see if they're having a clothing drive, because winter wear is one of the more popular items that shelters really need. They really are looking for a lot of winter wear. And so if you have that to donate, it's better to do it before you really need it. That way these kids can have it when the time comes. I think I may have touched on this before, but my list is a little out of order. Going back with the outdoor stuff, when we were talking about getting your house power washed, cleaning your gutters. Cleaning your gutters is a big one. You especially, and I do that like in the fall after the leaves have dropped, because depending on where you live, if you're somewhere where it's very wooded, your gutters can get filled with leaves. You don't want to have any drainage issues. Trust me, people, it will, if you have drainage issues that can go into your house, it could be a nightmare. So please, please, please stay on top of making sure your gutters are cleaned. And again, it's something, if you do it once a year, you're good. There's plenty of professionals that do this. It's not overly expensive to have your gutters cleaned. If you want to brave the, heights and get on a ladder yourself, go for it. But please be careful, because again, an ER visit, and God only knows what else. I've heard of too many people falling off roofs. So please don't overdo it. Either hire a professional or just be extra safe. But yes, checking gutters is another great thing on your fall to-do list. So that's something that I strongly encourage you guys to do. Going back into the house, in addition to our outerwear that we want to go through, it's also, I think, a great time to start pulling out, if you are somebody that flips your clothes seasonally, pulling them out. So saying, okay, what are some of the summer things that I'm probably not going to wear at all? Now, I've found that the seasons kind of blend together more than they used to. It used to be once, the kids went back to school, we were totally in like fall wear. Nowadays, it's, our summers are lasting longer. And so kids are in shorts till, the end of September, whatever, depending on where you live. But I think there's certain things that you might not be using. So for example, if you know that you're not going to be using your bathing suits, or you're not going to be wearing certain tank tops, there are certain things I would, if you are somebody that flips your clothes out seasonally, I would start pulling that stuff out. And I'm okay with this if you're okay with this, but I'm okay with leaving your seasonal bin kind of tucked away, either in the corner of a bedroom or in your closet if you have the space, so that as you're wearing stuff and you realize, oh, I'm not going to be wearing this now, I think I'm done with it for the season, but I want to keep it, you can just put it in that bin. And so because the season transition is something that may take a couple of weeks, I actually will leave my seasonal bin tucked in the corner of my bedroom until I'm done. This way, it's not like I'm just throwing clothes on the chair or on a hook, or heaven forbid on the floor. I'm just able to add to it, periodically as I'm going through it. And then eventually it'll just transition over. And you can do that also on the flip side with the fall stuff. Like I have my seasonal bin of fall stuff. I have some kind of fall wear that I will be wearing now because it's a lighter, but I don't need a heavy wool sweater yet. So I don't need to necessarily bring that out in rotation. And how quickly and how you go through this process and how, what that transition looks like is going to depend on your space, how much room you have. Do you have room to store this stuff? And, your time and bandwidth. So again, I'm okay personally with like leaving that bin as a transition for a few weeks. But if that's something that stresses you out and you're like, oh my gosh, I just have to make that flip in one sitting, you can do that. But recognize that, again, it's a gradual process. You're going to be gradually going out of the summer lighter wear into your long sleeves, flannels, sweaters, all the layering pieces. I love the fall. It's my favorite. Boots, high socks. It's awesome. I love it. So lots of fun things. But again, it is something that is going to require a little bit of intentionality for you, but it's worth it in the end to me, because that way, when I go to get dressed, I know that the stuff that's in my closet or in my drawers are the stuff that I actually want to wear now, not stuff that I have to leaf through and get through all the stuff that's inappropriate for this time of year to get to find what I'm looking for. Oh, and the other thing, which I should mention, even though if you've been with me for a while, you would know, is purge first. So before you take that summer maxi dress that you've worn a ton of times and you put it back into the seasonal bin for next year, think about, am I going to want to wear this next year? Or has it lived its life? Because sometimes you're like, you know what, this is great, but this is the last year. This is the last season. So purge before you pack. Rule of thumb. And on the flip side, as you're bringing out your fall/winter wear out of the storage area, assess it and go, do I really think I'm going to wear this sweater? Do I really think I'm going to wear these jeans? Do they fit me? Do I like this still? Is it still in style? So just because you had it in the bin last year doesn't mean it has to make its way to a hanger. So ask yourself that question before you commit to putting in your closet. Okay, I'm flip-flopping all over the place. Sorry, guys. You could tell I did this totally brainstorming. Going back outside. So we were talking before about generators. One of the things that's really important is to make sure, if you have a generator that's not hardwired to your house, you want to have a gas can to fill the generator. So you want to make sure that you have them accessible. You have a gas can filled, ready to go, because again, you want to make sure that when the time comes, you have that. And that also goes for any other supplies. So you want to make sure that you have, salt for de-icing. You want to make sure that I also use that time to double check and make sure I have like windshield wiper fluid for my car, any other things. All I put in my car, the ice scraper. And listen, for all my listeners that are in warm weather climates, now you get a glimpse into what we have to deal with here in the Northeast. So be grateful that you don't have this. But these are the things that we really need to think about and be mindful of making sure that we have all these things in place. I also like to make sure, which I have on at all times, but especially in the fall, you want to double check and make sure maybe you have a portable jumper cables. You want to have all kinds of stuff in your car that, like I have a car bin of supplies that in case you need it, God forbid you ever get stranded, you want to make sure that you have all of that stuff accessible, umbrellas, things like that in your car. I always keep a roll of paper towels, thing of Clorox wipes, all that stuff. So especially if you're doing the garage, it's a nice way to just kind of add that into the car. And of course, looking at routines, as we are going through all of these like areas, fall, in the fall, it's a great time to think about what are the habits that we want to get into? Are we going to be home on Sundays watching football? Should I start doing meal preps on Sundays? That's what I do. How many nights a week am I going to be cooking? What do the kids' routines look like? What nights are we going to be out because the kids have practices late. And so we know that those are the days that we're going to need grab and go food. And maybe I need to start bringing out my crock pot or my Instapot, whatever it is. So looking at, sitting down and being intentional about saying, okay, what is the next 4 weeks look like in our lives? What are the things that we have coming up? September is usually busy between back to schools and, like I said, getting acclimated into classes and activities and all of the different things. And again, work things are starting to hopefully pick up for people so that, we've had 18 months of being at home and having a little bit of the luxury of time of saying, oh, I can throw a load of laundry in between my Zoom calls. That might, for some of us, be going away. And so we have to kind of reestablish our routines. And so using I like to sit down literally with a calendar and look at what are the days that I'm going to do this? What are the days of my week that are busier than other days so that I know, okay, I'm probably not going to cook on Tuesdays because that's a really long day for me. So we're going to order out on Tuesdays, or we're going to cook a big meal on Monday and have leftovers on Tuesdays, whatever that looks like. Kind of planning that, because that way you don't have to feel as stressed and harried and rushed, and everyone can be on the same page. So I really love to use fall in general, September, the month of September, to get all my ducks in a row before the craziness sets in of now we're into Halloween and then Thanksgiving and then Hanukkah and Christmas and all of the things. So use September as a planning month. And if you do that, it can hopefully be the calm before the storm. So that's it. That's what I've got for you guys. I hope I know I put a ton of information out there, but I'll put links I'll have this entire list in our show notes. So again, if you don't remember what I had, we'll put it in there. You can download it. We'll put it in as a checklist. So simple download for you guys. Have a list of all the things, and hopefully you guys can get your fall off onto a great start. If you have any other questions, you know where to find me. You can always email us at info@simplybeorganized.com, or again, of course, anywhere on social. So until next week, guys, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out.